Good morning and welcome to your Friday 5 for 5. As always on Friday mornings, I'm Adam, the worship pastor here at First Baptist Church of the Islands in Savannah, Georgia. All this week we've been talking about prayer, and I want to continue that this morning by looking at a little story that I heard once called The Weight of Prayer. Louise Redden was a poorly dressed lady with a look of defeat on her face. As she walked into this grocery store, she approached the owner of the store in a most humble manner and asked if he would let her charge a few groceries. She softly explained that her husband was very ill and unable to work. They had 7 children and they needed food. John Longhouse, the grocer, scoffed at her and requested that she leave his store. Well, visualizing the family needs, she said, "Please, sir, I will bring you the money just as soon as I can." John told her that he could not give her credit, though, because she didn't have a charge account at his store, and asked her to leave. Well, standing beside the counter was a customer who overheard this entire conversation between the two. And the customer walked forward and he told the grocer that he would stand good for whatever she needed for her family. Well, the grocer was not happy with this, and he said in a very reluctant voice, "Well, do you have a grocery list, ma'am?" And Louise replied, "Yes, sir, I can." He said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. Put your grocery list on the scale, and whatever your grocery list weighs, I'll give you that amount in groceries for free." Well, Louise hesitated for a moment, and with a bowed head, she reached into her purse, took out a piece of paper, and started scribbling her grocery list. Well, she wrote something on the paper and laid it on the scale carefully, with her head still bowed. As soon as she laid that paper on the scale, the eyes of the grocer and the customer showed amazement when the scales went totally down and stayed down. The grocer, staring at the scales, turned to the customer and said, "I cannot believe this." The customer smiled, and the grocer started putting groceries on the other side of the scales. The scale did not balance, so he continued to put more groceries on them until the scales would hold no more. The grocer stood there in utter disgust. There was a piece of paper that was outweighing all these groceries. Well, he grabbed that piece of paper from the scales and looked at it with amazement. It wasn't a grocery list. She had written a simple prayer that said, "Dear Lord, you know my needs, and I'm leaving this in your hands." The grocer bagged up those groceries that he'd put on the scale, stood in stunned silence as he gave them to her. Louise thanked him, and she left the store. The customer who had just witnessed all this handed a $50 bill to John and said, "This was worth every penny to watch this." It was sometime later that week that Mr. Longhouse discovered that his scales were broken. Only God knows how much a prayer weighs. Sometimes it can feel like our prayers are never heard or that we're just praying in vain, but God is there and we can rest assured that He hears the prayers of His people. So don't grow weary in prayer. In Colossians 4, verse 2, Paul says that very thing. He says, "Don't be weary in prayer. Keep at it. Watch for God's answers and remember to be thankful when they come." I know that waiting can be hard. It can be the hardest. But know that God is listening and that He will answer, because only He truly knows the way to prayer. I'll see you this Sunday morning in person or online at 9 or 10:30 as we worship together. I hope you have a very safe and happy holiday weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.